What if there's a place on Earth where time doesn't just slow down, it stops? Where a wooden ship can sink, disappear for 2,000 years, and come back up looking like it sank last week. No rot, no worms, even tool marks still visible. How could an ocean, salt, dark, restless, become a museum that never closes? You're standing on a coastline that's seen empires rise and fall. Greek traders, Roman soldiers, Byzantine merchants, Ottoman fleets. The Black Sea has swallowed all of them at some point, and normally the sea is hungry, wood is food, iron becomes dust, ropes vanish, history dissolves. But in the Black Sea, divers and researchers keep finding something that feels almost impossible: intact ancient ships, hulls with their planks still joined, masts still standing, amphorae still stacked like cargo that was never delivered. It's not one lucky wreck, it's a pattern. The first clue is simple: the Black Sea is not like most seas. At the surface, it behaves normally: waves, storms, salt water, fish. But beneath that surface, there's a boundary like an invisible ceiling. Below roughly a couple hundred meters, the water changes character. It becomes heavy, dense, and strangely isolated from the world above. The second clue is even simpler: oxygen disappears. Most of the deep Black Sea is anoxic, meaning there's little to no dissolved oxygen. And oxygen is what makes the usual cycle of decay possible. Without it, a lot of the organisms that shred wood and chew wrecks into skeletons can't survive. The bacteria that do live down there switch to different chemistry. Slower chemistry, stranger chemistry. Then comes the third clue: poison. In anoxic water, sulfate-reducing bacteria can produce hydrogen sulfide. It's that rotten egg smell. In high concentrations, it's deadly to many complex creatures. So the deep Black Sea becomes a kind of underwater dead zone. Not empty, just hostile to the usual destroyers of ships. Now take a wooden vessel. Drop it into a normal sea. Within years, it gets invaded by shipworms, mollusks that tunnel through wood like living drills. Add oxygen, add waves, add scavengers, and the ship becomes scattered planks. But drop that vessel deep into the Black Sea, below the oxygen line, and shipworms can't follow. Many wood-eaters can't follow. Even corrosion changes because the chemistry is different. It starts to feel like you've found a loophole in nature, a place where the rules of time are rewritten by physics and microbes. And the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. Because it's not just one ship. In 2018, an international team led by the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project announced dozens of shipwrecks, many remarkably preserved, discovered using remote sensing and robotic exploration. One of them, a Greek merchant ship dating to around 400 BCE, was found with its mast, rudders, and rows of benches still intact, details archaeologists rarely, if ever, get from ancient wrecks. Think about what that means. For centuries, historians argued about how certain ships were built because art and texts can be vague. A vase painting might show a ship, but not the joints. A poem might mention a mast, but not its bracing. Yet here, in the dark, the ship is still giving up engineering secrets as if it's a frozen blueprint. And it's not just about ships. The Black Sea is layered like a cake made of different waters. Rivers like the Danube, Dniester, and Dnieper pour fresh water into it. That fresh water is lighter, so it sits on top. The Mediterranean pushes saltier, denser water through the Bosporus, and that sinks. The two layers don't mix easily. Less mixing means less oxygen carried downward. Less oxygen means the deep stays anoxic. The anoxic deep stays hostile. The wrecks stay whole. So the Black Sea becomes a time capsule, not because it wants to preserve history, but because it's trapped in a chemical stalemate. And once you realize that, the implications spread outward. Because if the Black Sea can preserve ships like this, it can preserve other traces too: cargo, food remains, wooden tools, maybe even textiles under the right conditions. It becomes an archive of trade routes and accidents, a map of ancient globalization, a record of storms, wars, piracy, and miscalculation. Then another strange connection appears. The Black Sea is also famous in geology and archaeology for a controversial story: the idea of a catastrophic flood in the past, when rising waters from the Mediterranean may have poured in and transformed a smaller freshwater lake into the sea we know. Some researchers have linked this possibility, carefully, not conclusively, to ancient flood myths. The details are debated, and the timeline matters. But the mere fact that the Black Sea's history includes dramatic water changes makes it feel even more like a place where the past can be both buried and preserved. The more you investigate, the stranger it gets, because you start to sense two timelines running in parallel. Up top, the sea is alive and busy. Down below, the sea is a sealed chamber. And inside that chamber, human history is stacked in layers. To understand how real this is, you have to follow the people who went looking. Oceanographers have studied the Black Sea for decades as one of the largest bodies of anoxic water on Earth. The basic mechanism, stratification, limited mixing, oxygen depletion, is well documented in marine science. Archaeologists, meanwhile, have been chasing ancient shipwrecks across the Mediterranean for generations, usually settling for fragments. In the Black Sea, they saw a rare chance, not just to find wrecks, but to find ships. The Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project worked with specialists in underwater robotics and mapping. Instead of relying on lucky diver sightings, they used sonar to detect shapes on the seafloor, then deployed remotely operated vehicles to film and photograph wrecks in high definition. They also recovered small samples for dating and analysis, because you don't want to disturb a time capsule more than necessary. And the finds fit the hypothesis beautifully. Deep wrecks below the oxygenated zone tend to be astonishingly intact. For a moment, it's tempting to believe something almost mystical is happening, like the Black Sea chooses to preserve, like it's a vault with a lock. But then you hit the twist. Most experts don't see the Black Sea as magic at all. They see it as a very specific set of conditions that still don't guarantee preservation. Because anoxia alone isn't a spell, it's a factor. Ships can still be damaged by impact when they sink. They can be crushed by pressure depending on structure. They can be buried by sediment, which sometimes helps preservation and sometimes distorts or breaks things. They can be disturbed by underwater landslides, currents, or even other wrecks. And even in anoxic water, microorganisms still exist. Some decay still happens, just differently, often more slowly, and often without the usual cast of larger scavengers. There's also another reality. Many shipwrecks are not perfectly preserved. We just don't talk about the broken ones as much. The spectacular examples become famous, and your brain starts building a story where the Black Sea is a flawless archive. It is. It's selective. It preserves some things exceptionally well, especially at depth, but it can also erase. And there's a more mundane reason the wrecks can look perfect on camera: perspective. A remotely operated vehicle gliding through black water with bright lights can make a wreck look like a ghost ship frozen in space. But you're often seeing a single side, a silhouette, a moment. The real object may be fragile as burnt paper. Touch it wrong, and it can collapse. Bring it into oxygen-rich water, and decay can accelerate. Preservation doesn't mean immortality. It just means the clock has been running slower. So the dominant scientific explanation is not that the Black Sea is uniquely enchanted, but that it is uniquely stratified and chemically extreme, creating an environment where the usual destroyers of wood can't thrive. It's physics and chemistry: layered water, limited mixing, low oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, a deep sea that behaves more like a sealed container than an open ocean. But that explanation, while powerful, doesn't solve everything either. Because if anoxia is the key, then why do some wrecks still degrade faster than expected? Why do certain materials survive while others vanish? Why do preservation conditions vary so sharply over small distances? Scientists point to microenvironments, tiny differences in sediment, local currents, how a ship lands, what it's made of, what cargo leaks out, and what bacteria colonize it first. The wreck becomes its own ecosystem, its own chemistry experiment. And there's a deeper uncertainty that's easy to miss. The Black Sea is not static. Climate shifts can change river input. Temperature changes can alter mixing. Human activity can affect nutrient levels, which influence oxygen in surface waters. Over long timescales, the boundary between oxygenated and anoxic layers can move. That means the time capsule line is not a fixed depth carved into nature. It's a living border. So you're left with a conflict between two truths. On one side, the Black Sea really can preserve wooden ships in extraordinary condition, in a way that feels like science fiction compared to most oceans. The evidence is on the seafloor, filmed in crisp detail, dated to ancient centuries. On the other side, the reason isn't supernatural, and it isn't guaranteed. It's a fragile balance, and balances can tip. Which makes the whole story feel strangely urgent. Not because the Black Sea is about to suddenly release all its ghosts, but because the best archives are often the most delicate. The same isolation that protects a wreck also makes it vulnerable to change. If the chemistry shifts, if oxygen penetrates deeper, if currents alter sediment, you don't just lose wood, you lose information. The shape of a rudder, the pattern of a joint, the fingerprint of a shipbuilder who never knew you'd be looking. And that's where the Black Sea time capsule becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a mirror. Because you live the same way in a sense. Most of your past doesn't survive as complete scenes, it survives as fragments. A photo, a smell, a few sentences you replay. Yet sometimes, by accident, something is preserved perfectly. A voice message, a childhood notebook, a song that hits you like a ship rising from darkness, intact. The Black Sea doesn't preserve because it remembers. It preserves because conditions align. And maybe that's the unsettling part. History isn't saved by meaning. It's saved by chemistry, by silence, by depth, by the luck of where things fall. So the next time you imagine the past as something gone forever, picture those ships standing on the seafloor, still shaped like decisions people made on a normal day, sailing toward a normal horizon. And ask yourself what else is sinking around you right now, quietly, invisibly, waiting for a future that may or may not have the right conditions to remember it.